Hey there, interwebs! It is time for my favorite type of review to do because it is Star Trek novel time! Yes, today we're going to be reviewing a brand new Star Trek novel. This one, Star Trek Picard, Rouge Elements by John Jackson Miller, a book finally giving us the backstory of one Cristobal Rios, one of the new characters created for the Star Trek Picard show. Yes, if you can't tell, I am so excited to talk about this book, and not just because of my normal, excitement to talk about Star Trek novels, which are my favorite part of the Star Trek franchise. I know, I'm weird, I love Star Trek a whole bunch, the novels are the best thing for me. Regardless, though, the reason I am so excited to talk about this book in particular is it may be one of my favorite Star Trek novels that I have read in quite a few years, and that is saying something because, again, I love Star Trek novels, and I've loved quite a few of them, but this one is a true masterclass, and I am so excited and pumped to talk about it. As I said, this novel is the backstory for the character of Cristobal Rios, the character that appeared on Star Trek Picard, the captain of the La Serena, the sort of Han Solo-esque freighter captain who Picard hires in order to take him out into the galaxy in the events of the first season of Star Trek Picard. Now, Star Trek Picard was probably my least favorite, at least the first season of Star Trek Picard. I am excited for season 2, but the first season of Picard was probably my sort of least favorite iteration of modern Star Trek from Star Trek Discovery onwards. I like parts of it, but I just did not love that season as a whole. But one thing I really loved about that show was the different creators, and specifically Rios. I found his character to be deeply fascinating. I loved his sort of Han Solo-esque nature, his sort of quirky attitude, his joking, bits, but his sort of haunted past. Now, his past, I have issues with his backstory that we learned in Star Trek Picard, but his character was really, really great. And I also loved the different holograms that he created of himself on his ship to sort of engage with. The EMH, the engineering hologram, the different things that he had created on the ship that all looked like him, and so he's constantly sort of arguing with himself and his sort of different aspects of his personality. It was a really, really fun character to engage with in that show. And so this book really sort of dives into the backstory of that character after he gets kicked out of Starfleet under mysterious circumstances. And it chronicles the events of him getting his new freighter ship, the La Serena, the main ship of Star Trek Picard, and his sort of first few years dealing as a freighter captain, dealing with sort of being on the edges of Federation society, dealing with the sort of underbelly of society, and really diving into kind of a character study of who he is as a person. And that's sort of the main thing I want to say about this book. This book, more than anything, is a deep character study of Cristobal Rios. It really delves into the pathos and thoughts of who he is as a person during the first few years of his life post-Starfleet. Him dealing with the trauma of what happened to him. I won't spoil what happened to him because it is sort of leading into the plot of the actual show, Star Trek Picard. And the book doesn't really deal with it all that much. It comes up, but it doesn't really delve too much into it. It really is dealing with more of the fallout of that trauma, his drinking, his alcoholism, his sort of depression of his self. All that is on display here. But it also shows his tenacity, his thoughtfulness, and his humor that he brings to being a freighter captain. It also shows his reckless behavior, his sort of self-destructive behavior after this time. All of this book sort of delves into all of that in really interesting ways, and John Jackson Miller does such a great job dealing with the pathos and bringing forth the character of Rios in these moments, sort of really making us feel for him. There are a few moments in this book that I was sort of really feeling the heartbreak and pain that Rios was feeling, and there were other moments where I was just laughing along with his hijinks and sort of him sort of being frustrated with these different holograms that he's created, because we also learn sort of there's obviously, because this is a backstory novel, we learn sort of specific things like how the holograms created, why they all look like him. There's a funny backstory for why the holograms all look like him having to deal with his holograms and being frustrated at constantly having to engage with the holograms that look like him and never wanting to deal with them, but always having to in different circumstances that come up. It's all a lot of fun in that way. But the thing that I really love about this novel too, beyond just the character study here, is the plot. Feels like kind of I want to say an Odyssey, like the Greek Odyssey, where there is one story being told through here. There is a sort of mystery surrounding the previous captain of the La Serena, a former Klingon captain, and sort of a mystery surrounding him that Rios starts to uncover throughout the novel. But while that sort of is the through line of the story, like I said, this takes place over a few years and really sort of as that story is unraveling, Rios gets involved in other different events and stories and things going on throughout the galaxy as a freighter captain that, start to reveal more about his character, tie into the larger plot, but also feel like small isolated incidents that all sort of like feel like they're revealing character, revealing more about him, while also pushing the plot forward slightly too. And it just creates this wonderful, like I said, sort of Greek Odyssey tale of just an evolving character study, small little stories that all feed into a larger narrative here. Also, John Jackson Miller does such a great job tying in so many disparate corners of the Star Trek universe into this story. It is honestly a masterclass in just really utilizing the Star Trek universe to its fullest, and I truly, deeply loved it. One of my favorite things is we learn, and this happens at the beginning of the novel, but it sort of carries throughout this, that the people that Rios buys the La Serena from are the Iosians. The Iosians being the aliens from that gangster planet that we saw in the episode A Piece of the Action way back in Star Trek, the original series. So yes, it's all about, and we learned that the Iosians, after engaging with Captain Kirk, sort of spread out to the galaxy and sort of became these different gangs operating on the frontiers of society, but also sort of having that sort of like, yeah, we're mobsters, you see? And so Cristobal is getting involved with like these like gangster, like 1940s gangster, prohibition gangster gangs. But they're sort of like, yeah, see, we're gonna get a piece of the action, and sort of like owe him money, that he owes money, but they're in space. It's like space gangster stuff, and it's hilarious and a lot of fun, and yet weirdly fits within the strange story that this tale is telling. There's also some other really cool characters that pop up too. Another character that pops up, for example, is I forget his full name, but Fajo, the collector character who kidnapped Data in that one episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. There's been a lot of between Lower Decks and this novel, there's been a lot of stuff about the collectors, like the actual collector characters in Star Trek recently, which I think is kind of funny. But he plays an important role in this too. And I don't want to spoil other stuff that ties into this novel, but there's stuff that ties into the movie versions of Star Trek Picard, the show, Star Trek Discovery even gets a couple little references here and there. TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager stuff all gets tied to this, and it all feels natural. It's not like, hey, look, that's a reference. Hey, look, that's an Easter egg here. It all feels like perfectly naturally evolved into this, as Rios sort of goes out and discovers these different parts of the galaxy and the sort of underbelly of the galaxy, and also dealing with the fallout of the Romulan supernova. Really brilliant stuff going on throughout this novel, and I cannot praise it enough for that. There's also some really cool ideas here, like unique uses for holograms and holodecks. Like I said, we get some backstory and usages for the holograms on the La Serena, and I don't want to spoil too much, but there's this sort of like discussion of holographic art and like photographic holographic art that gets used in really beautiful, unique ways. Like, not something I would have thought would happen in a Rios novel, but there's like really cool discussions of what art would look like in a hologram world. What is holographic art? And that becomes wrapped up in the mystery of the major sort of plot beat of this story. So many brilliant ideas. And I like I said, I cannot praise this novel enough. I really, really loved it. The only thing that I would say is to sort of sort of give you a sort of warning going into this novel, as like I said, it is a bit more of a meandering plot than normal. Don't go into this expecting a straight through plot story. It is much more a story that's, again, a character study that sort of visits different elements and pieces of his life that does tie into a larger mystery and narrative, but doesn't necessarily go straight through it the entire time. It's more of using the mystery and the elements involved to uncover Rios as a character. And I really, really loved that. I thought it was absolutely freaking brilliant, a really well-crafted novel, but it is not for someone who wants a really tightly plotted, straight, like pulpy action story. It is not your typical Star Trek novel in that sense, which Star Trek novels are a lot more typically plot focused. This one is much more character study focused. Not to say that there isn't plot, but it is a different type of style than you would normally get from a Star Trek novel, and I really loved it for that. Not that I don't like other Star Trek novels, but just to break up the mold of that, I think was really, really nice. Overall, I cannot recommend this novel enough. If you are a fan of Star Trek Picard, if you are a fan of Cristobal Rios, if you are a fan of character studies, if you are a fan of the Star Trek universe being tied together in very disparate, different ways, coming together in a natural forming way, this novel is the novel for you. Fantastic stuff. John Jackson Miller has crafted a true masterpiece here, and I cannot recommend that you go out and buy this novel enough. It gets a full recommend from me. I loved it. Please go read it, and I hope that you will enjoy it. But if you've read the novel, I would love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. Did you like it? Do you want to read it? Beyond that, I would like also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I also have a Patreon that you can help me out on. I also have a main channel where I do more video essay stuff. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper.